The Americans want our resources, our water, our land, our country. Think about it. If they succeeded, they would destroy our way of life. America is not Canada. And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form.
Well, look at that. Mark Carney sure sounded confident about that a while back, right? No way anyone in Canada would ever belittle themselves by being a part of something so low as America. What did he say there? We would destroy their way of life. These are bold words coming from a country with a GDP around 1/15 of ours. And you know, I wonder what he would say today. Because times have changed. It's not America that wants Canada. It's Canada that wants America. It's called Wexit, Western Exit. It's the western half of Canada on the path to succeed from the eastern half of Canada. It used to be merely a conversation, but those days are over. And Alberta is at the center of it all. Hardworking Canadians are tired of the talk. Some Western Canadian politicians can't take it anymore either. And Carney was dead wrong. A good portion of the West is now standing up to the globalist abuse from the eastern seaboard and their capital in Ottawa. They know that America prospers. We have an economy that can help them thrive. We offer freedoms that they don't have up there. Canadian people, they're responding. They want jobs and a thriving economy without the political indoctrination. I'll explain it all and show you how they have all responded. We'll also look at some numbers too. Then we'll look at how Ottawa, the capital of Canada, has abused the Canadians who really produce. So let's slow down briefly and put it all in perspective. In a nutshell, what we're looking at here is British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Alberta telling the nation's capital, Ottawa, that they want to be independent. BC and Saskatchewan are motivated, but the beating heart of all of this really is Alberta. They're really seeking their own independence first. Once that has been established, then pretty much everyone else can use their template for themselves. So here's Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith.
I will say again that the separatist sentiment was created by Ottawa, by policies that targeted our industry, that chased away investment, and that are still in place today. I take that seriously, and I hope that the federal government takes that seriously.
Alberta is the backbone of Canada. Nobody else provides the finances like they do. They supply more money and productivity to the Canadian economy than any other of the provinces. Just for one example, approximately 84% of Canada's entire production of crude oil comes from Alberta alone, 4.3 million barrels a day. Saudi Arabia produces around 9 million barrels a day. To keep it all in perspective, Alberta also produces around 61% of Canada's natural gas, and 12% of all of Canada's electricity is generated from just that one province alone. From 2007 to 2022, Alberta sent over $244 billion to Ottawa, and no other province came close to matching them. Many, in fact, ran into debt. Alberta's 5% real GDP growth rate was the fastest in Canada. This accounted for almost 18% of Canada's real GDP growth across the board. All of this while Albertan residents are only about 11% of the total population. Imagine that. You're living in one of the least populated, most productive provinces in Canada. You're the backbone of the Canadian economy, and all you get from elite snobs in Ottawa is grief. You get no thank yous, no appreciation, just a callous attitude and a legislative demand for more money to fund illegal immigration and a leftist agenda abroad. You supply the oil and the energy. Ottawa supplies the take it all and give it away. How long would it be before you got sick of it yourself? I mean, can anyone really blame Alberta?
Successive Liberal governments in Ottawa, supported by their new Democrat allies, have unleashed a tidal wave of laws, policies, and political attacks aimed directly at Alberta's free economy and, in effect, against the future and livelihoods of our people. They have blocked new pipelines with C-69, canceled multiple oil and gas projects, and banned the very tanker ships needed to carry those resources to new markets. They have stacked an oil and gas production cap on top of a crippling industrial carbon tax, making new energy and agricultural projects economically impossible to pursue without massive subsidies from governments, which Ottawa has failed to provide and which our taxpayers cannot afford. This onslaught of anti-energy, anti-agriculture, and anti-resource development policies have scared away global investments to the tune of $500 billion, driving those investments and jobs out of Alberta and Canada to much more attractive investment climates in the United States, Asia, and the Middle East. Having traveled much of the world these past few years, it is evident that Canada is not viewed as an attractive place to invest in resource development, manufacturing, or agriculture because of our high carbon taxes, endless red tape, and the uncertainty and chaos brought about by these and other federal government policies.
You can see from Premier Smith that she and many others are tired of these abuses. Imagine the western half of the United States formally addressing the eastern half and asking for secession. This is all a very serious thing. And now that that stage has been set, let's look at how Albertans are going about making that change. I mean, after all, this isn't going to be an easy process. It's not like they can wave a magic wand, and getting voters to back all this up is not going to be a simple task. But going after voters is exactly what they did, and they went about it in a very clever way. This is really interesting, too. They did two things. They set up the Alberta Prosperity Project to get funded. This is their public relations money. Every political movement needs something like this, of course, but this isn't where they got clever. It was on May 15th that they got Bill 54 passed. This was the key. This is how they outsmarted Ottawa.
Alberta just shook up its electoral system with Bill 54, and it's causing a political storm. Premier Danielle Smith's new law brings back corporate and union donations, removes voter vouching, bans electronic tabulators, and lowers the bar for recalls and referendums. Critics say it opens the door to money-driven politics and weakens voter access. The UCP says it's about giving Albertans more power. With donation caps lifted and hand-counted ballots returning, Alberta is heading for a very different kind of democracy. Whether it's reform or regression depends on who you ask. But one thing's clear, this bill changes the game.
So the way Canada makes political changes is different. They have a king, premiers of each province, and within each province are a number of different districts that each have what we would think of as an elector or a representative. In Alberta alone, there are 87 districts. And from there, things are just going to go ahead and get more complicated. But you know what? We're not going there. For our purposes here, we'll just stick with what is relevant. We don't need to get bogged down in all the details of their whole system. Here's the bottom line. Citizens in their respective province can introduce a referendum to make serious change. A referendum puts the change they want out there to be voted on. Now, this isn't something that is taken lightly. Traditionally, it takes 20% of all eligible voters to get that referendum on a ballot. It's only happened 2 times before. But this is where Bill 54 came in and they got smart. Bill 54 changed that. Instead of 20% of all voters, now they only need 10% of the votes cast in the previous election. This cut the number of signatures that they needed to get for that referendum from around 600,000 down to 177,000. It's an enormous difference. It also extended the time that they had to get those signatures from 90 days up to 120 days. This was the move that shut Ottawa down. Suddenly, Mark Carney isn't so sure anymore. He can take his arrogance and put it right where they want him to. He mocked America at first. Now he might be seeing Alberta go independent and possibly become America's 51st state if things keep progressing the way they want it to progress. As you can imagine, there are still hoops to jump through, too. I mean, Alberta is not going to gain their independence right away. The actual vote doesn't happen until 2026, and people still have to genuinely vote yes on the referendum, of course. Opinions have been divided over whether or not there are enough voters to get it passed, too. One of the latest polls there to measure this is the Angus Reid poll. It found that about 30% of Albertans were sure to support independence. That leaves about 70% undecided. But 30%, believe it or not, is a really big number. And it's only going to grow because Danielle Smith is putting the full weight of the Prosperity Project behind this. The money will fill in eventually. In addition, Bill 54 added more money to the pot. It increased the amount of finances that can be donated to the citizens' referendums by allowing corporations to contribute as well. Corporate donors back Alberta. That's only natural. With their oil reserves and their energy production, it won't be any problem for them to continue down whatever path they choose to take. Again, though, that's not to say the coast is clear. Along with other smaller hurdles to jump, Albertan independence is facing serious objections from their indigenous population. Chiefs from different tribes entered into agreements prior to Alberta's entry into the Confederation in 1905. They have their claim to Treaties 6, 7, and 8. Here's one of those chiefs expressing his doubts.
Maybe she thinks First Nations people are in the way. And it's about time that we rise and stand up in a peaceful way. You know, the world can learn from Treaty 6. That's a peace treaty, my friends, my relatives, that we agreed to live and coexist with the white brothers. And we've been nothing but dirt poor people and beggars in our own land, that we should be the richest people in this world. And the kind of message we want to send is we're not happy. We're tired of the government passing these bills where you don't see two sentences of Indigenous inclusion, and that has to stop.
Now, in addition to local chiefs, Ottawa and Mark Carney are sure to express resistance. You know they are seriously leftist. It's not going to be an easy battle. Those treaties have been in place for a long time, too. They do deserve respect. But Premier Smith now, she did respond.
A number of First Nations chief and councils have already sent letters to the Premier saying any attempts at separation would violate treaties and reiterated the province does not have the authority to interfere or negate them. Smith assured listeners on Saturday this legislation is in line with Section 35 within the Canadian Constitution.
The First Nations have a special relationship with the Crown, a special relationship through treaty, and none of anything we are proposing would ever violate that.
So let's wrap this up, everyone. Here's the bottom line. Alberta is on the warpath to get independence. They've got the money and the brains. They outsmarted Ottawa with Bill 54. They control the oil and liquid natural gas for almost all of Canada, and they are determined. There will be obstacles in their way, especially the Indigenous tribes, and there are many other smaller hurdles to jump. Who knows precisely what will happen? We can't bank on anything, but we can use common sense, right? All the resources are in their corner. They're using them wisely. They're clever, and they have a candidate by the name of Cameron Davies on their side. He is one of Alberta's most popular and probably their only MAGA candidate right now. So will they gain independence? I'll say it's likely that they will in time. Will they become America's 51st state? Who knows? But I do believe they are gunning for it. They're just not coming out and explicitly stating it just yet.